Hi, excuse the mess in the background as I show you how I weave in ends on the Zhivago shawl, which is part of a kit, and it comes with 6 yarns, 2 skeins of big merino cloud, 2 skeins of regular merino cloud, and 2 skeins of beaded silk sequins light. And what I do in order to set them up is I wind some of them together, and the instructions are in the pattern. But what I wanted to show you today was how I handle weaving in ends. Because there's so many color changes in this, and that's what makes it such a beautiful shawl, you end up with ends, and you want to be able to weave them in so that you never see them again. And so I'm just going to show you briefly how I do that in this pattern. So what I do is I take an end, and here's a typical one, which is double-stranded. Actually, it's 2 strands of merino cloud, and I thread my needle with them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to weave into the pearl bumps in a straight line, or as straight as I can get. And I do that in one direction. And I use like a minimum of 3 here. I've done 3 of them. And I weave in and I pull my strand, making sure that it doesn't pull too tightly. And then in order to really fasten it well, I go back in exactly the same direction in which I came. Actually, I can just pass it through those same pearl bumps in reverse. I pull my strands out, and then I can use my scissors and cut it off. Okay, now I'm up to another one. I'm going to do it exactly the same way. I'm going to thread my needle, and here I'm working with big merino cloud, which is a worsted weight yarn. Beautiful, beautiful cashmere merino combination. And here, I just want to make sure you can see exactly what I do. So I go in and out of the pearl bumps on the wrong side, but closest to where my strand is. So here I'm picking up some of these pink strands just through the pearl bumps, all in a row, just like that. And I pull my needle through and adjust it so that it doesn't pull the fabric. And then what I can do is skip that first bump that's closest to my needle. And then what I do is I go through all the other ones, just in the exact reverse order in which I just came. As you can see it from the back. And then I take my yarn and my scissors and I cut it right off. And as you can see, I made another end disappear. And I do that again with my next one in exactly the same way. Once again, this is another end with big merino cloud. And I could just bring it in and out of the pearl bumps right next to the one I just tucked in. So I'm just gonna go right next to it. 2, 3, 4. Pass it through, so just like that, and then skip the first one and then go back and make sure it's woven in and cut it right there at that point where it was last woven in. And if you find another end, which I just did, that is sticking out, you just cut it, because you've woven in the 2 directions. It just won't pull out. because it can't. It just won't go out. And so that's the key to this, is to do it on the wrong side, but in both directions. Now I'm going to skip a few strands because I want to show you how I handle the beaded strands. So we include 2 skeins of beaded silk and sequins light. And beaded silk and sequins light is a yarn that is composed of 2 parts. It's composed of a strand that has beaded silk and sequins on it, and another strand that's just pure silk. And silk is very strong, and what I'm doing is separating the strands. And so one option for weaving in this yarn is to separate the strands just like I did, and just weave in the pure silk strands, but cut the strand with the beads and sequins so it doesn't get in your way. So I'm going to cut it right now. Okay, done. It's gone. And then what I'm going to do instead is only weave in the strand that has the silk. And in this case, it's, I guess I knitted it together with another strand, which is just the wool. And I'm going to weave them both in together because I knitted them together. In this pattern, you're always going to be doubling yarn because it's a worsted weight pattern. And just make sure you're always weaving in on the wrong side, because you really will get a little bit of a bumpiness in the areas where you weave in, and you want it to always be on the wrong side where the purl bumps are. So I'm weaving in again, just as I did before, through the purl bumps in one direction, and then I'm gonna pull my strand through, make sure I loosen the tension so it's not too tight, and then I weave in the other direction, skipping that first one. Usually I like to do about 3 or 4 purl bumps. And now I've done it, I'm ready to cut that strand. So I'm gonna do that right at that point where I've woven it in. Okay, so you know, you're gonna come across areas where your strands may have been cut too tightly, and what you could always do is, if you have a very small strand that you need to weave in, I'm going to use, it looks like I didn't cut this one all the way, for example, but I'm going to use it as an example. You could always take your needle and weave it through the purl bumps, and then after that thread the really small strand through, and this will help you get a handle on tightening up the smaller strands. And even if I weave back, I can just weave back by inserting my needle in the stitches I want to go in, and then after my needle is properly inserted, take my mini strand and just pull it through. Because that happens from time to time. You made a mistake, you cut it too tightly, too short, so that's always handy to know. Anyway, I'll get back with you when I've woven in the ends, and I'll show you the completed pattern and the piece. But thanks for watching.